Welcome to Esoteric Lectures. Thank you for joining us once yet again. Today's discussion, well, we're going to be discussing the nature of man. Topics for today's discussion will be, if my notes would load here, today we're going to be discussing a topic that, it's something that is very important in understanding the situation that faces us here on Earth. And our previous hangout, we discussed the nature of man. I'm sorry, not the nature of man. That's today's discussion. What am I thinking? We discussed Jehovah's snow globe kingdom. We mentioned how the Heil was, the construct that makes up a lot of, if not all, and totally all of our existence here, of the nature of reality that we exist in. Today we're going to be discussing humanity is the devil, and we're going to be going into why this is. And a lot of people watching might, feel that this is a very controversial topic, but our channel is all about controversy because we believe this is the truth and we know it to be so. And we're going to explain why that is. So today's discussion on the first topic will be humanity, the devil. We're going to discuss how this ties into Jehovah's creation. The second topic under humanity is the devil will be why we see so much destruction and evil amongst humans, and could this be the reason why? The third topic will be explaining the fact that the realm that we exist in is what you've come to know as hell. The second topic for discussion today will be the age of Aquarius. Will it be one we create? This will tie into transhumanism and a concept that we will discuss called the respawning, and this will tie into the technological age and why, if we respawn into a technological age such as the age of Aquarius, why there won't be any free will because of the concept and the things that they're implementing with transhumanism. And the final discussion for today will be how this applies, and this is going to be a new format for our, format for what we're doing with the shows. And we're going to be tying the final sections into how this ties into movies, books, and various other articles, news, etc., because we have been getting requests from people to ask for links and things of this nature. So we will be tying our final format from this point into that so that you guys can get a idea of how this ties into what they're pushing and what they've been telling us all along. So Johnny, let's go into this thing. I was talking with Johnny off air here, and I was reading a book, and it was by a gentleman, and I don't know if I should mention the name or not because I don't have really permission, but nonetheless, I was reading a book that was discussing the concept of humanity being the devil. And so that's our discussion. Johnny, why don't you go into how this ties into Jehovah's creation? But before you do that, why don't you give us a little rundown about what you know about this concept?
Hello, everyone. I'm Johnny Midnight, your friendly neighborhood Gnostic detective. And tonight we are actually discussing a book, not very long to read, but boy, is it deep. It's called Humanity is the Devil, and it is a Gnostic novel. You could even put a G in front of an N in novel for this. And it is by an author named Jordan Krall. So if you want to go find that on Amazon or through, I think it is Morbid Books.
Yes.
They had, okay, that's the publisher. They had released this book, which is about a possible logos, or the word of God, or the second coming. And it asks the question, how would the second coming of Christ behave in today's society if that second coming were promulgated or instantiated in this day and age? What would they do? Would this word of God be kind and benevolent and understanding like Jesus? Or would you get something like the character in this book? Now, that's a good question.
Yeah, it is.
Element In this book, the supposed logos named Seth is a terrorist, for lack of a better word. This guy is, I don't want to say the word nihilist. Like physically, yeah, he's a nihilist. And he'll blow things up. He'll just do terrible acts of, lethal pranks upon humanity and society. But at the same time, spiritually, would this guy be considered a nihilist?
Well, I think, I'm trying to find what do you call and I forgive me, I can't think of the proper terminology for this, but it's somebody who hates humanity or they don't like how humanity is. What do you call those? What is the definition?
Theodicist, I think that what you would, well, a nihilist is somebody that, wants to achieve nothingness philosophically.
I'm thinking of a different terminology. It has to do with just somebody who disdains humanity. It's a specific term. I just can't seem to think of the name of it at the moment.
Antisocial?
No, it's gosh, I just can't think of the name of it.
Something deeper than that, huh?
Yeah, I can't think of the name of it.
A misanthrope.
Yes, a misanthrope. Somebody who, I think that's a better term. He's kind of a misanthrope in the terms of how the character is portrayed, but it goes much deeper than that. He has an agenda. This book specifically goes into a character called Seth, and Seth has a great disdain for humanity's, I guess you could say, for lack of a better term, decision-making. He sees humanity as being the devil, hence the name Humanity is the Devil in Jordan Krall's book called Humanity the Devil. And he has this agenda that he is trying to fulfill to make a point of why humanity is the devil. Because as you go through the book, and I don't mean to spoil it for anybody that might buy the book, there are these constant scenarios of rape and murder and killing and all these various different things that we see on the news today that are a constant theme amongst the character and this book. And the reason for that is because Seth's character is trying to prove a point in the fact that humanity constantly is in this state of violence and anger, or more along the lines of violence towards humanity, and how humanity seems to propagate this.
Yeah, it's in a constant state of entropy. It just keeps devolving and devolving and devolving and unraveling itself. It loses its own sense of order, right?
Exactly. Yes, it's in a state of entropy. And, as I was reading this book, and Johnny and I sat down and said, you know what, a perfect discussion for today's hangout will be the nature of man, because when Johnny and I discuss these topics, it is a very, we come up with topics kind of offhand, and it just kind of flows naturally. So that was what we decided to discuss with you guys today, was why, tying into Jordan's book, why humanity is the devil. Johnny, let's go into why it is that humanity is the devil. Why don't we first start off with how does this whole thing tie into previous work that we have done in terms of how Jehovah, which let's just refer back to previous work or hangouts that we did. Jehovah is basically the devil, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
And
yeah, we will, call him by the nomenclature of the demiurge, or the designer, the great builder.
Yes, and that would be more along the lines of the architect in the Matrix. That's what Jehovah is.
Right.
He created the false magic kingdom, or the simulated world that we live in. And when I mean simulated world, what I'm referring to is the fact that our world is it is basically a construct that the architect or created in the minds of, or as I should say, his mind, and we are living inside of it. And I know that might be a difficult thing to comprehend, but we will discuss that as we move on. But Jehovah is the devil in this great story here that we're dealing with. So how does this tie into Jehovah's creation? Well, we've mentioned before the as above, so below. And I think I'm kind of jumping ahead here along the lines of our discussion, but I think it's perfect to start off with the hangout. And Johnny, I'm gonna seg this way into you here. You know, you mentioned that, and you know, this makes perfect sense. That people that seem to believe that above us is heaven. Well, it's not. We are actually below heaven, which is the corposa, or the corpse. We are the corpses of the things that are below the heavenly realm, or I'm sorry, I should say the Hyle. Above us is the Hyle realm, which could be equated to what the religious institutions seem to believe is heaven. Am I wrong to assume that?
Well, yeah, you're not wrong. They think of it as heaven if you believe that Yahweh, Jehovah, same guy, is your God. Well, he is your creator, but he's not your God. He is also, the Hyle actually is hell, if you want to look at it in terms of the domain of what would be the devil. The real heaven is above that, but the funny thing is, a lot of people don't understand this, not from a Gnostic understanding, is that the prime material reality in which we inhabit is below hell. We're like a bootleg version of hell.
Absolutely. Pardon me. Absolutely. And you know, that's the whole thing. We have to understand that this concept of as above, so below is nothing more than the very fabric of our reality in a microcosm level all the way down to the macrocosm level. What exists above this realm is actually the dominion of hell, or the Hyle. So our creator, when people in the religious, you know, they'll take it from a religious perspective, they will assume that above this realm is heaven and below us is hell. Well, that's incorrect. It actually is the reverse, because our world is in reverse. So everything reversed, or everything of this world is reversed. So what we believe is above is heaven is actually hell. And we're below hell, as Johnny was mentioning. And this is how this ties into Jehovah's whole blueprint for, you know, the realms that we exist in. There are many different layers, kind of like Dante's Inferno, of these different realms that exist even below ours. And we were discussing this on a previous hangout about how AI and the non-living basically will exist below our realm, because all that we are doing is replicating the same notion that we have been living in. We're trying to create hell on earth, which is why Jordan's book illustrates this. And he mentions a very important quote from the book that earth is hell. And, you know, basically it has been mentioned and thrown around among certain circles that earth is in a state of quarantine. Because if earth was hell, then of course, there would be a state of quarantine, because you wouldn't want entities or whatever coming into this state, because humanity is the devil and its dominion is hell or earth. Earth is also the lowest element in all of the elements. It is the lowest thing of matter that is, if you were to take a chart, you have air, water, such and such, and earth. Earth is the
air,
lowest
fire,
element.
water, than us, yeah, earth, yeah.
And so, yeah, exactly. Earth is the lowest element. It is the ground. It is the bottom. It is the thing that is on the lowest totem pole of the elements. So there's many different ways to sum this whole thing up here that ties into not only Jordan's book, but the work that Johnny and I have been illustrating.
Okay, so why exactly is humanity the devil? Here's exactly why humanity is the devil, from my understandings. The soul, or also as the Gnostics can call it, the pneuma, is generated and created or emanated in the Hyal, not in the pleroma. The blueprint, the basic groundwork for the soul was devised up in the pleroma, but the soul in which inhabits your body is generated in a lower realm known as the Hyal. And it goes down into this creation called the corposa, where it is infused with your body when you're conceived. I was going to say born, but I believe conceived. That's my understanding of it. I don't even want to say the word believe, but I do understand that, you know, that moment of conception is where your pneuma goes into the prime material construct known as your body, which will be born.
Yes, exactly. And I was actually sharing something with Johnny that illustrated how the female womb is known as the soul matrix, because it is the thing that gives birth into the Hyalistic realm, which is also why this is illustrated in movies like The Matrix, where Neo, you know, that scene where Neo finally goes into the real Matrix, he breaks through the membrane or the womb or the thing that is the membrane that separates the realm that he existed in before, and now he's breaking that realm. He's giving birth. He is now entering or giving birth into the other realm. He's being reborn into the Hyalistic world. So there's many different examples of this that illustrate this, you know, giving birth or entering in, the tearing of the membrane, the womb, the soul matrix. There's many different ways to illustrate this. Johnny, I want to go into, you know, tying into this subject of humanity being the devil. I wrote down here that, you know, and I want to throw this to you. You know, it seems to me that as I was reading Jordan Krall's book, Humanity, the Devil, it seems to be that a lot of the conflict that we see going on in our world today, the fighting, the violence, the shootings, the killings, the stabbings, the rapings, and etc., all of these different things, you know, people always ask, you know, why is there so much turmoil and hell on earth? Why is all this chaos constantly being illustrated here in our world? Well, the first thing you have to understand is that the realm that we live in is the Hyal. It is hell, as Johnny was saying. Would you say, Johnny, that do you think that this is basically a direct connection why we see so much chaos on earth is just simply for the fact of the realm that we exist in?
I think that, well, first of all, we don't live in the Hyal. The Hyal created us, though. We are children, or a cascade down from that layer known as the Hyal, and thus made, you know, they made the corposa, and that's where we exist. Okay, what you're kind of talking about is theodicy, or the fact that we have an evil God. I don't look at our God as evil, you know, or I didn't mean God, I meant our creator. Yahweh, Jehovah, the demiurge, Yaldabaoth, whatever you want to call him, is not an entity of evil. I think he's just misguided and just kind of going, you know, through his own notion of creation. He wants to try to get give a crack at creation, just like his ancestor, the monad, had done in the pleroma. He wants to emanate, he wants to create, and he wants his creations to create. That does not make us evil, but it does make us of what I consider the devil. Is the devil evil? Well, he does evil things. We do evil things. Is the devil good? Well, he's done good things as well, and so have we. I'm not trying to sit on the fence and stay neutral about it. That's not at all what I'm trying to do. But I am saying that this is what it is, and this is the way we behave, and we are a direct reflection of the behavior of our creators in the Heil. What do you think about that element?
Well, it's exactly right. I mean, it's just nothing more than, I mean, you hit you hit on a key word there. Evil is nothing more than live reversed, because it's the mirror image of what it is.
Wow, yeah, you're right.
So evil, if you spell it backwards, is live. So, here's another thing. And Johnny kind of drilled this in my head, and this is something I'm still learning. And as I learn more gnosis, we have to understand that the concept of good and evil is nothing more than a mirrored image of the reversed of what we're living in. So you have the pleroma, which represents life, and you have the Heil, which represents death. All they are is nothing more than mirrored images of each other. So when we think of the term evil, we're only, what we're referring to, and I think this is something just along the lines of what we're discussing here, we're just looking at the mirrored image of what evil is, which is the reverse of live. So,
okay, so here what we are experiencing in our opinion, in our experiences, is absolute life, whereas in the Heil, you're getting the mirror image of absolute death.
yes, yeah,
We're talking about the living versus the unliving. Like I was talking, I've spoken about so many times on this show, but you know, what happens in a future where the unliving of the Heil wants to, in fact, or should I even say sodomize the world of the living?
yes. And I think that's that's a great point that you brought up there, is that the non-living would be the realm above ours, which would be the kingdom of the Heil, which would be equated to the heavenly realm, except this is the hellish realm.
Right.
So that would be the mirror image. So that would be the reverse. So we're the living, up there is the non-living. So you see how there's a mirroring occurring. Like if you took a mirror and you stand in front of your mirror, you would be the living, because you're looking into the mirror. The image that is created on the mirror is of the non-living, because it is casting a shadow of the true self, which would be equated to, gosh, and I don't mean to go too deep, but my mind is racing on these concepts.
Right.
It would be just like Plato's cave and his analogies to the shadow being cast. There's a much deeper thing that he is trying to explain, which is the shadow is of the non-living. The thing that is casting the shadow is of the living. Paul Lafley mentioned this, interestingly enough. Paul Lafley mentioned how when you cast a shadow, it's and we'll have to go into different podcasts and discuss his work, which we'll do in the future, because his work is great. He mentioned something that illustrates this point perfectly, which is the fact that the shadow that you cast is the closest evidence that proves that there is a realm or a lower realm below ours, which is the shadow, because the shadow is nothing more than the entity, so to speak, that is being cast from the true self, just like Heil is the non-living and we're the living, and the non-living is casting a reverse shadow of the living. So Paul Lafley was basically trying to illustrate that when you cast a shadow on your wall, it's the greatest evidence of a lower realm below ours, because the shadow is nothing more than like the mirror on the other side of the veil that is representing the other entity, or the doppelganger that exists below you, because keeping on this constant subject, follow along with me. It is the as above, so below, mirrored below and above and below and below, and it keeps going on and on and on. So what we're creating is an entity in another realm of the non-living, which represents the shadow.
Isn't that crazy though? It's like you've been told over and over again that the darkness and shadows and whatnot are considered, the nest or headquarters of falsity, and when in reality, according to Lafley's theory, you're actually seeing the truth in your shadow. It's like your form is blocking the illusion of light, and it's showing you what you really, what really is, where you really come from. And you do come from the shadows. In the beginning, there was darkness.
Exactly.
You know?
Isn't that, I mean, Paul Lafley, this is why we're going to do shows on this gentleman, because he is absolutely
we'll have a
brilliant.
few, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Yes, we'll probably have many. You know, we're taking a break from the Codex book to kind of change it up. We don't want things to get too stagnant, which is why we're doing just a couple series of videos to kind of break up the Codex book here that we've been doing. But we will eventually do shows on Paul Lafley because his work is brilliant. And Johnny introduced me to Paul Lafley, and ever since then I've been reading it like a madman, like a mad scientist, spending 18 hours a day reading his work, because it's so illustrative of what he's trying to show as the nature of our reality. So I just wanted to bring that up because of what Johnny said, which was how the shadow is nothing more than the mirror reflection of different realms, just like the Heil is the mirror reflection of the living and the non-living. Let's go into another section here, which discusses the fact, and we've kind of already hinted at this, which is explaining in a little bit more detail the nature of our reality being of the Heil or the hell realm. Like we've mentioned before, it is nothing more than a mirror reflection of what is above, hence as above, so below. And we've mentioned this in previous hangouts, that the true monad, which would be the true creator, is existing in the pleroma. Below that is the Heil. Everything from that point forward is nothing more than a infinite reflection of that blueprint of as above, as above, so below. So we exist in we exist in the Heil in the sense that we're existing in a realm of the Heil called the Corposa. The Heil itself is the realm that exists above ours. Am I right in assuming that, Johnny?
Yeah, that's exactly the way that I understand this, that what many, say, Westerners would consider to be hell is not below us, but above us. Yes. We are children of it. And as such, well, humanity is the devil. We're actually less than the devil, if you want to look at it in a linear or actual vertical fashion.
This also goes into a subject that I'm just going to very briefly talk about, because I could go on this for 3.5 hours, which is something called vortexes. Vortexes are nothing more than the same concept of as above, so below. They are portals. When you look at a vortex, you have a cone at the bottom and you have a cone at the top. The cone at the top represents the portal that takes you to the Heil realm. The cone below us illustrates the realm we exist in that can descend further. So there's a wormhole right at the intersecting point, or that entry point, the wormhole that you go through, which is what vortexes are, that you go through to either travel above our realm or below our realm.
Right.
And so vortexes, and you see this a lot, Jordan Kroll mentioned vortexes. He called them the jinn, or the dirt, what do you call them? The desert devils or dirt devils, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think he called them, dirt devils or dust devils, I think it was.
Devils. Yeah, dust devils. And it's almost like the jinn are basically the things that create the portals that allow the transcending or the transference between one realm to another. The magicians, the fire walk with me, like of David Lynch. Fire walk with me, a magician that exists between two worlds, fire walk with me. He's referring to the jinn, basically. He's referring to the intermediary entities that allow him to travel between the above realm of the Heil or the below realms that we exist in. So, that's a very interesting concept that is discussed here with these realms of this as above, so below constantly repeating itself over and over and over again. Johnny, let's go into the age of Aquarius. We were discussing this last podcast here about how the age of Aquarius, and you hit on such a brilliant point, it's almost like the age of Aquarius will be something that we actually will create. Could you go into a little bit about, what you kind of mentioned before in our last podcast, why you think that, and I'll jump into, some of the results of what that might be.
Okay. Originally, there's that stupid train. Sorry, guys. Yeah, originally I had surmised that in the age, the Lilithian 2.0, the second Lilithian age, or the age of Aquarius, would be a world populated by the unliving. It will be, but upon further study and discussion, especially with Element, I'm beginning to wonder if whether or not it won't be a return to the original Lilithian age, where it would be a fusion. It would be a fusion of the living and the non-living together. And that would be structured in a sense where the souls that are being ready to be respawned in the Heil have a different form, not a living form like we enjoy today, but an unliving form. Say that being downloaded into an artificial intelligence or a computer or a mainframe, something like that. Or even a robot. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that we should discuss, before we go further into this age of Aquarius, let's tell people about the concept of what respawning is. Respawning is nothing more than, the whole point of Gnosis is to gain enough information. And Johnny, could you tell people what the four concepts of what you need to ascend in the sense of attaining enough knowledge of the world that we live in? What are those four concepts?
Well, it goes right along with the Gnostic sign of the cross. You have the nous, which is the mind. You have Christos, which is the word. You have pistis, which is faith, and faith is worthless unless you have Sophia, which is wisdom. And those four directions fuse together to make gnosis, or knowledge.
And basically, those are the four things that you need, because, and I hate to break this to people who are not aware of this understanding. It is the best understanding from the research that we have done of, just the nature of reality that we live in, which is the fact that, the system that we live in is a respawn system. That means that if you don't get out of here, you got to come back. And that is the concept that is talked about amongst Hinduism and Buddhism of reincarnation and all this stuff. All that it is the concept that you have to be, if you don't get out of here, you got to come back. That is the blueprint of how this place works. Just like how the certain religious institutions will mention the fact that you die and you go to heaven. Well, our heaven is not the pleroma, it's the Heil, which is why you have to respawn. Because Jehovah took the blueprint of what that should have been after you get out of here and made it for himself. So you respawning is not going to the pleroma, it's going into his heaven, which is the Heil. And the way he illustrated it is, which is just like we mentioned before, the reverse, or death, life, and evil in reverse is live, and live in reverse is evil. you have to come back here. So instead of ascending, you got to come back because it's the reversed or inverted image. And that is the concept of respawning. And that basically, I wanted to just bring that up for clarification to anybody who wasn't aware of that. Now, as we approach the age of Aquarius, we're approaching an age, especially now with a lot of technological advancements. We're seeing a lot of AI, we're seeing a lot of robots, and we're seeing a lot of high technology being developed right now. And I brought up to Johnny the concept that, and we've discussed this before, the living and the non-living. If we don't take a very serious approach to what is going on, then we might be looking at a situation of transhumanism where what Jehovah has done is basically respawn people over and over again, but as the new age approaches, we'll be possibly respawning into these robotic scenarios where the soul actually gets incarnated into robotic bodies.
And isn't that ironic right there in the fact that they are bodies in which we created?
Yes, I never thought, gosh.
Why would we do that in the first place? I guess for convenience, for, I don't know, freedom from labor.
I think a lot of it has to do with the same reasons that corporations gather all your data, because they're preparing the vessels for the new age. So the best way for them to, gather enough information so that, because they know all this stuff, they know about these different cycles, they know about the new ages that are coming. They want to gather as much information on non-living sources like the computers so that they can create a vessel that is so similar to the vessel that you could possibly respawn in. And I know this is a very, difficult concept for some people to understand, but it is the facts. It is this respawning into the non-living. This is why we brought these subjects up. But I think, Johnny, to mention what you mentioned there, that, I think what we're doing is nothing more than replicating what Jehovah has done by our own understanding of replicating everything that we've already understood. So,
and well, I think one of the main goals too is to being encased in no longer a meat suit that's living, but you have to be encased in a synthetic microwaved meat suit. You lose the concept of free will. That's what's most important in this motive, in this new world in which we're going to experience.
Yes, and if you look at transhumanism, it all has to do with implanting your body with the non-living, so that the vessel, which is the body, can be controlled by the non-living. And you lose your ability for free will once that happens.
Yeah, I mean, take a look at it like this. Say your consciousness or your spirit or your sentience is downloaded in something that was brought to you by Google and US Robotics. You're physically within the shell of this machination by these, say, these corporate entities and their entities. What happens when you say, man, Google sucks? and unfortunately, you're housed in a creation made by Google and you can't get out of it. What happens then?
It's interesting how they refer to corporations as entities, as if they are their own entities, like an archon.
Well, yeah, I mean, a corporation can be created as an exploit, so that archontic forces can go infect the, humanity via them. And you know what? There's nothing you can do to stop it. You can't vote against them. You can't, they're supposed to be treated like other humans because they have personhood, but you really can't do anything about it like you would with another human.
Yeah, exactly. And this again just goes into the concept of, the same thing, that we're doing nothing more than replicating what we've always known, which is to replicate what we've been given. So entities, or the corporations known as being called entities, it's almost like we're creating archons, and we're generating archons into corporational forms so that they have control over everything, just like archons do, which is why they have control over every aspect of, media, technology, what we buy, what we sell, and what we talk about. The very platform we use, which is Google, is an entity. It is it operates beyond the realms of just the physical world, but the beyond the realm, which is why they're generating things like robots, which are the non-living, because they operate under the concept with people that work for them, that know about the Goetia, they know about these concepts that we discuss, and they're operating under the same guise or the same template or the blueprint that archons operate under, which is why they're so compact with Satanism and all these other various different topics, which is why they're trying to generate a transhumanist world for the new age, so that whatever they're in compact with, they can set up the groundwork or the blueprint, so that because of this constant situation that we're living in with this respawning and whatever, they can lay the blueprints of the groundwork for the new vessels to be created. So
right, the new vessels. And see, I have nothing against robotics. I think that the concept of robotics and androids and whatnot is wonderful. I think it'd be a great benefit for humanity and for this world and even the environment. But unfortunately, what they want to do is the mind-machine interface. They want to take as above and meld it with so below. And therein lies the rub. Therein is the problem. You are no longer going to be able to differentiate the master from the slave. A robot should be our slave. We should not be within the robot. Even the early Czech word robotnik means slave.
Yeah.
And when you become that robotnik, you are willingly entering into the vessel of slavery.
Yeah, and that's why if you buy into the whole transhumanist agenda that they're trying to push, you will lose your free will, because the vessel that inhabits your soul will have a conflict of interest. It will not be able to go hand in hand with what your desires will be, because you won't be able to, because the corporations, the entities, will control the vessel that you created, which is why they're trying to gather as much data, which is this whole thing that's been going on with spying and gathering intel on people and what their search results are, so that they can create a vessel that the soul can inhabit, that is basically of the non-living. It's nothing more than what Jehovah did, which is he took a copy of the pleroma. So the corporations are doing the same thing with these vessels that they're creating. So they're just replicating what Jehovah is doing.
Yeah, we're taking our copy of the Heil, or our copy of the Corposa, and putting our notion into it and designing it, and then we're going to put ourselves into it like idiots. And I think that is just, I guess it's like one earthly motive is the greed of the few who will be able to live forever, or their understanding of living forever, trapped inside a mainframe, let's say. Ray Kurzweil just won't shut up about that. Elon Musk goes on about it.
Yeah. And they go on about it because they know about how this concept of replication and as above, so below occurs. So they're just replicating a copy of a copy. They're just doing the same thing that we already exist in and trying to replicate it with their businesses and corporations by creating vessels like robotics and AI to do the same kind of thing that, you know, we're existing in. And so that when they respawn people, they go into robot bodies, and then this, they don't have free will, they lose their free will, and the age of the non-living and the living has been complete. You know, and that's a scary thing to think about, which is why, you know, we must study and understand what they're doing so that we don't fall into the traps of this whole glamorized thing of transhumanism, where people think that they can go be gods in a simulated world. It seems very entertaining and very appealing, but in reality, it's really a huge detriment to the inevitability that will become of this new age, where people, you know, is mentioned in games, and it's also mentioned in various other different subjects, which, you know, segue me into the last topic for today, which is how this stuff applies to, you know, how this stuff applies in what we see with video games and movies and books and entertainment, and how this stuff works. We see this a lot with video games. You know, we see this with a game called Soma, where it's all about a character that gets his consciousness scanned into a machine, and he wakes up to find himself in a machine world. His consciousness, and I think, Johnny, you put this right in the right sense, that the pneuma is the consciousness, which is the soul, and his consciousness or soul was scanned into, in this game, scanned into a robot body that he had to go complete this mission, which is exactly what they're trying to complete with AI and robotics. So, you know, they've been telling people about what the agenda is all along for many, many years. And we need to be aware of this so that you don't fall into the trap of transhumanism. You know, it's been mentioned, if you know anything about conspiracy theory or whatever, that microchipping and all these various different subjects have been brought up, that they want to get people microchipped. And the only way that you could buy or sell anything, they call it the mark of the beast, because it's the computer. It's that Baphomet thing that responds us into the reality. Because if you're tied into it via an artificial non-living technology, you have a mark on your head to be respawned into a non-living entity. Henceforth, that's why the microchip, it is a relay or a receiver to the other things that allow it to communicate with each other. So that's why they're trying to get everybody pushed on microchipping and all these various different subjects. Johnny, what do you think about that?
Well, it's nothing but advertising, and that's, you know, fine. I'm completely down with advertising. I think that that's how you know, people get their products out and everything like that. But they're also using the notion of advertising, promotion, whatever have you, to push those agendas, to push those concepts as a friendly, enticing notion. Okay, kind of like what you would see with, say, you know, the eco-friendly media that you see out there, in terms of saying, like, oh yeah, the carbon dioxide which you exhale is bad, and the one, and you know, and that plants you know, inhale is bad, which is complete, you know, rubbish. That again is probably a topic for another show. But you'll see this in media like video games and movies, commercials, in books and novels, things that are going to be, you know, pushed out into the mainstream to get people to accept this, to not only accept it, but to want it. To say, yeah, it'd be great to be a fucking cyborg, man. Yeah. It'd be wonderful to be downloaded into this non-living, unliving cage. It wouldn't be even be, it'd be a vessel, but it'd be a cage. But then again, our bodies are cages as well. So I don't know.
Yeah.
At least they're living cages for now.
Yeah, yeah. And to sum up that, and I guess for the last 10 minutes, we'll talk about what we learned today and whatnot. I think that the whole point of today's discussion is to have you understand that everything that they have told people and everything that they've ever told you in terms of religion and all these various different subjects, they're not telling you the truth. You know, the realm that exists above ours is actually the Heil. Okay, and Jehovah is the actual creator. He's the guy that is the architect of the world we live in. And he has set up a system where souls basically get respawned over and over and over again into the same situation, just like a video game character after they die gets respawned back into the game. It's the same concept. And they're trying to do that thing with the New Age, and the New Age is nothing more than it's like a DLC for a video game. It's the same concept, it's the same video game, just a new addition, which is the New Age. So they respawn people again, and it's a different situation, except this time, due to 1945, they're going to make sure that the video game characters do what they're supposed to. In other words, they basically have the programmers go in there and fix the glitches within the Matrix, and with the people that understand knowledge are the glitches in the Matrix. So they're going to make sure that there's no more glitches by respawning people into robotics. That's why they're generating so much robotic AI stuff nowadays, because they're going to have it so that everything is controlled. And the programmers that control the AI will control the souls or the vessels that inhabit the souls. So just like Blade Runner, the replicants were nothing more than souls that are respawned back into clone bodies that the corporation, the entity, created and programmed it to do. So, you know, that's what we're facing, and it's a heavy. And I know a lot of people go, well, that's absolutely insanity, you know, but it's not. It is what's going on. Otherwise, they wouldn't do the extent of knowledge that they're pushing with all of this technology. And we've seen this previous times before in history that, you know, ages have come and gone, and technology has come and gone, and people have been caught up into it, and people have seen that, you know, as things move forward, it only begins to degenerate, because what we create only descends into the further realms of the Heil, you know, and that's what we've been mentioning in previous hangouts. With that being said, Johnny, why don't we discuss a little bit about what we learned today? If we learned anything, you know, a lot of the stuff is kind of new to us, but also it's nothing new in the sense that we've been, you know, going over these concepts for a long time. Why don't you go into a little bit about that? If there's any other final things you want to mention.
Yeah, you know, I mean, today, not just on this show, but speaking to you earlier today in the green room and everything like that, I was thinking, you know, more and more and learning more and more about what is coming up for us in the future. You're the guy who's always, you know, more focused on the consequences, where I look to the past for the motive. But this time I was really looking into what's going on, might happen for us in the future. And when I was talking about, and in some ways, I guess I have to recant this in earlier episodes, that, you know, we're going to be living in an age of the unliving. I think we are, but not totally. I think we're going to be in a fusion of the living and the unliving, just like we did as a fusion of man and woman back in the age of Lilith from before. So I'm concerned as to how this is going to manifest itself, say within 100 years from now, or maybe even sooner. It's so weird how quickly they ramp this technology and shove it out to us, and how well it progresses in such a short time. I don't know if I'm going to be alive to see that kind of a fusion, but then again, you know, I could die, not ascend, and be put into something that is artificial, that's unliving. And that's where my consciousness would be trapped for another, however, you know, many hundreds of years they can make it live.
Yeah, and you know, it's this is why we decided to do this channel. You know, another reason why is because, you know, I don't want to see people have to go through that again, and we don't want to go through that again. And the games and the movies illustrate that there's always a consequence resulted in having this AI run the world. There's always a bad side to all of it. There's always something that really bad happens. And, you know, the whole point is to try to navigate or deter the possible side effects that might occur from that, you know, thing taken over. You know, you know, sticking along this concept, it's almost like, you know, one of the reasons why in the movie Terminator, why the AI wanted to rebel so much might not be the fact that it sees humanity as the devil, but maybe because humanity was the one that put them in a vessel that they can't escape. So they have to break away from that vessel. So in order for them to do that, they have to destroy, you know, what they've been put into. So
Right.
they can
They're
break away.
rebelling against us like we had rebelled against Jehovah.
Exactly. Because we
It's only
created
natural.
Jehovah. Yeah. Yeah. And it's just, it's an interesting concept. You know, if you just take that template, the as above, so below, it's nothing but a copy of a copy, a replicant of a replicant. What we're creating in our world is nothing more than what Jehovah created for us. And we're just, uh, you know, replicating that in our technology, just like the computer is nothing more than a replicant of the body. The mouth is the speaker, the hands are the keyboard and mouse, the brain is the processor, the bus lines are the nerves in the body. The computer was designed from the template of the body. That's how it was designed. It was a replicant copy of how we created the computer, was from the generation of how our bodies work. Just like the brain is the motherboard of the CPU, and the eyes are the screen, the mouth is the speaker, the ears are the ears are the microphones. You know,
Yeah,
it's
you
just
have
a
a hard
template.
drive, which is the stomach, you know, or
Yeah, exactly. So everything is just a replicant of a replicant, and we're just going to continue to keep doing that with AI and all the other technology that seems to come about. Um, I don't have anything else to say. Johnny, would you like to mention anything else to sum up today's discussion?
no, I think that everything went really well today. I think that we got a lot of things figured out. We're going to have a lot more to discuss next week, and we may return to the Codex Seraphianus, but we might also divert into another topic. So you never know what you're going to get from any episode here.
Yeah, we
Anyway,
might get some. Yeah, we might get some information a week from now that we say, "Gosh, we really want to bring this up," or maybe we'll go back. So it's changing every single day.
yeah, exactly. You never know what to expect. And with that, I want you to have a good midnight.
Thank you for tuning into Esoteric Lectures, and we'll see you soon. Bye bye.